Hi everybody, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Lysha from Lysha Be Creative, and in today's tutorial I'm using this heart-shaped wrapping paper that I had left over from Christmas time on a tumbler. So I'm doing a half wrapping paper and half glitter tumbler for Valentine's Day, and I thought this was a super cute and subtle Valentine's Day themed tumbler that definitely is something you can be using all year round and not just for the month or leading up to February. So of course everything I use in today's tutorial will be listed and linked down in the description box down below. You'll also find discount codes as well as links to all of my social media where you can find me outside of YouTube. Certainly also make sure you give this video a huge thumbs up as well as subscribe to my channel. It helps me out a lot and you don't want to miss the content that I have coming up. So let's go ahead and jump right into today's tutorial.
Hey guys, so I am starting with a 24-ounce plump from the Steel Magnolia. This is one of their prepped tumblers, so it already comes sanded and prepped white, so I don't have to do anything with this. I just take it right out of the box and go ahead and get started. So I'm going to be using this Starcraft chalk paint that I purchased from Shop Vinyl Gallery. They have a lot of colors in stock right now, and this is a perfect alternative to spray painting cups, especially with it getting so cold here in upstate New York. It definitely is a plus to have a paint to be able to prep my cups streak-free and make sure that I can get my tumblers prepped and painted the colors I need. So I'm using a Wet n Wild makeup brush that I purchased from the $1.25 tree, and I am using that to apply my chalk paint. So I am going to apply 2 coats of chalk paint to this tumbler. I want to make sure that I get a nice good coat. I do end up having to go back in and apply a 3rd coat. You'll see why in the next section, but in between coats I am making sure to dry my coats before I move to the next step. So nice thin coats here for each before I go into applying the wrapping paper. Okay, so with my chalk paint applied and dry, I'm going to apply some 2-inch painter's tape to my cup to split my cup in half. So I decided that I wanted to do a slanted split, if you will. I did this back when I did my Bougie Queen cup, which was quite a few months ago, but I'll definitely tag that right here if anybody wants to check that out. So I'm just going to use painter's tape as my guide, and you'll notice that I am trying to take some of the sticky off of my painter's tape so that it doesn't pull up my paint. You are going to see that that happens anyway, but definitely running it either along your clothing or along your table just to take the sticky off and make sure that it's not so sticky that it's going to pull up your paint. So I'm just going to get these 2 pieces of 2-inch painter's tape applied to my cup side by side, and then we'll cut the wrapping paper to size. Alright, so I have cut a rectangular shape of wrapping paper for my tumbler here, and this is a rather large section, so I am going to trim it up just a little bit. I got this wrapping paper from, I believe I got it from Target. We used it for some of our presents this Christmas, and so I have quite a bit left over and thought this would be super cute for Valentine's Day. So now I'm just measuring and making sure that I have more than enough wrapping paper to go all the way around, and now that I feel like I'm good with that, I'm going to go ahead and start to apply this. So I'm going to apply my Mod Podge directly to the tumbler instead of on the back of the wrapping paper. Because I know the wrapping paper is larger than the cup section that I need, I'd rather apply my Mod Podge to the section that I want my wrapping paper applied to, and then just wrap my cup in the wrapping paper that way. You could certainly, cut your wrapping paper to be exact if you wanted. I just, for whatever reason, was having a hard time grasping that concept. So I needed a little bit of extra just to make sure that I didn't mess it up. And you're actually going to see me take this off and reapply it because I wanted to make sure that I placed my cup in the center section and that I had a full portion of the wrapping paper on my cup, if that makes sense. The way that I was applying it and rolling it, it was going to make it so that there'd be a really weird seam on one edge. So I had to really play with this a little bit in order to get everything lined up before I felt fully confident to be able to smooth that in nice and smooth with the Mod Podge that's already on the cup, and then be able to trim everything up. So with the wrapping paper applied, now I'm just smoothing everything out. And so I am going to use my squeegee tool, kind of the felt edge of my squeegee tool, to just try and get out any wrinkles. I was having a little bit of a tougher time, and what I will say about when you're choosing to use wrapping paper for tumblers, you definitely want to make sure that you're getting the wrapping paper that is thicker. So you can purchase kind of like this, I guess it's called like designer quality, I guess. So not like the super thin paper, and sometimes it's hard to tell when you're buying it or purchasing it. But definitely the thicker paper works the best. With the thinner paper, like this one was a little bit on the thinner side, not paper thin, but enough where I was having a hard time with some of the wrinkles. It does sometimes make it very difficult to get out all of the wrinkling that may happen. So you have to definitely play with it a lot and make sure that you're pulling it taut so that it doesn't wrinkle, but not too tight that you're ripping it. So it's definitely a little bit challenging in that respect. But if you're using that thicker paper, I definitely have never had any issues doing that. So now I'm going to go ahead and trim everything up. This was also really difficult. It was hard for me to find the edge of the tape. I was able to, cut a small section and then realize I was nowhere near the edge of the tape and go back. So take your time with this, or as I said before, you could start from the beginning, having exactly the size of paper that you needed to apply to your cup already cut and shaped. That way you don't have to fight with cutting things off like I am here. So I'm going to speed this portion up. I'm just going to cut along the seam of where the tape and the cup meet and get the excess wrapping paper pulled off so that we can go ahead and seal this wrapping paper right onto the cup. Now that the wrapping paper is removed from the tape section, I'm going to go ahead and trim up the top and bottom rims of my cup here. So just using my sharp craft knife to cut along that top edge rim and make sure that I have no excess overlapping the top. And I'm going to use my craft knife to do the bottom section as well. You could use your cup edging tool. Couldn't locate mine at the time that I was doing this, so I just ended up using my craft knife to cut along that bottom edge there. So now I'm going to go ahead and remove the tape, and this is where you're going to see that my tape clearly was too sticky because it removed my paint. So this does happen. It's totally okay. All you need to do is just repaint the section. Not a big deal, and I probably could have just started from the top, just managed to paint afterwards, if that makes sense, instead of painting beforehand. But hindsight's 20/20. It is what it is. I'll just go ahead and go in and apply some more paint to that side when I'm ready to glitter. So I'm going to take my Mod Podge, and now it's time to seal my wrapping paper. So obviously we only have the one layer of Mod Podge under the wrapping paper, so now we need to make sure that this is nice and sealed to the cup and that it's not going to give us any hassle when we go ahead and do our epoxy layers. So I'm going to add a thin coat of Mod Podge, not epoxy, Mod Podge to my wrapping paper here. And I'm going to do a full 4 coats of this. Typically I would only do 2 or 3, but because it was so thin, I wanted to make sure that I was having this completely sealed to my cup, if that makes sense. So when I was doing my last coat, I did go ahead and go back in and paint that section that my paint got pulled off, and made sure to seal my wrapping paper on the final coat. Let this dry, and then we can go ahead and Mod Podge and glitter the pink sections. Now time for glittering. So I'm going to make my own custom pink mix here. I'm going to use 4 glitters today. I'm using Pinky Promise, Chit Chat, Champink, and Fairy Dust. I will link all of these glitters down in the description box. And I'm going to use my medicine cup here, and I'm just going to do an equal pouring of each of the colors. I wanted just a different colored pink than I had on hand. I liked Chit Chat's color, but because it's a matte glitter, I obviously wanted it to sparkle. So I decided to mix a few of my favorite pinks together along with Fairy Dust, which is one of my favorite whites to use, and create my own custom mix. So now that I have my glitter all mixed together, I'm going to go ahead and use Mod Podge to apply my glitter to my tumbler. So Mod Podge in a thin coat all the way over that pink section, giving myself a nice even coat here. I know that I'll have to do 2 coats with Mod Podge so that I can make sure I have full coverage, but on this first coat I obviously want to make sure I'm getting as good coverage as I possibly can. So nice thin coats with my thick wide bristled brush here. I love these brushes. These are like my favorite brushes to use. Great coverage, especially when using either Mod Podge or paint to be able to use for any project. Anyway, so I'm going to make sure to obviously glitter the bottom, and then that little teeny tiny section right on the bottom of the wrapping paper side as well. And then I'm going to go ahead and dump my glitter all over this section. So just starting from the bottom, making sure to get full coverage, as much coverage there, and then making my way up the cup. You can glitter however you feel is easiest for you. You could even do epoxy method with this as well. But because my wrapping paper side was definitely not fully dry, I wanted to make sure that I didn't pull that up, as I probably would have wanted to tape off if I was going to use the epoxy method. So just going to finish glittering this, and then I will do a second coat, which I won't bother and show you guys. I'm going to do the exact same thing I did with the first coat, just waiting for this to dry, applying a second coat of Mod Podge, a little bit thicker than the first to get full coverage, and then of course glittering that entire section once again. After my second coat of glitter and everything is dry, I'll put this on the turner for 3 full coats of epoxy, about 20 to 25 mLs each for each coat. And then we're going to go ahead and work on the decals while we're waiting for that third coat of epoxy to dry. Okay, so in Cricut Design Space, I have a few things here. So I have a heart leopard print template that I got as an SVG file from an Etsy shop, which I will of course link down in the description. And I made that file 10 inches wide. And then I also cut 2 rectangles that were sized to 11.5 by 0.25 in height, 2 rectangles that were 10 or 11.5 by 0.1 in height, and then I cut a bunch of pink hearts that were about 1/2 inch wide, and I did about 20 of those. So I'm going to get those cut on my Cricut, and then we can go ahead and take our cup off the turner and get all of our decals applied. So before we apply decals, I'm going to go ahead and clean up my rim as well as do any of my necessary sanding. So I'm going to use a 60 grit sanding block to sand around the top rim, making sure to show a little bit of stainless steel right at that very top edge, and then also sand on the bottom of my cup. So I'm going to use a 60 grit for the top and bottom, and then I'll go in with a 120 grit or 220 grit brick just to smooth out any of those edges, making sure that everything is nice and smooth. That way we don't have any of that debris or any of those bumps showing on under our decals. So I'm going to start with my widest rectangles here, and I'm just going to use those to kind of frame out the edges of my wrapping paper here. So the vinyls that I'm using today, the holographic one, this is a matte holographic that I purchased from Shop Vinyl Gallery. I will link this product down in the description box. I absolutely love this matte holographic look. It's so pretty, and the way that this leopard print comes out on top of this cup, like, oh my gosh, it's just so pretty. Like, I love holographic vinyl, but this matte finish on this holographic vinyl just makes it that much better. So once I've applied the thicker strips, I'm going to go in with my pink strip here, and I'm going to apply that in the center of that holographic strip. So just kind of doing kind of a double layering of vinyl on my vinyl sections, my vinyl strips here that kind of separate the glitter from the wrapping paper. So once I'm going to go ahead and get that applied, I'm then going to move over to applying the hearts. So I'm applying the hearts on the wrapping paper side just to give it a little bit more. I mean, I probably could have left it out, but I just felt like I wanted to add a little bit more to this tumbler, if you will. And so I'm just going to place those hearts in between each of the 2 hearts. I'm going to apply these pink hearts in between 2 hearts above it. Ooh, that was hard for me. I don't know why, but that was tough. So I'm going to do this all the way up the cup here. I just thought it really just tied in that pink vinyl. I didn't have a fair pink that matched my glitter color, so I kind of just went with what I had. I still think it's gorgeous and pretty. I love this pink color, but I wanted obviously to tie in those pink strips with these pink hearts. So I'm gonna go ahead and speed up this process, and then we're gonna go ahead and apply this heart-shaped leopard print, which I just absolutely love this SVG, guys. So the hearts are applied, and now we're going to go ahead and switch gears to applying this heart-shaped leopard print. So I'm just taking a section of transfer tape that I just cut from my roll here, and I'm just going to apply as much of the leopard print that's going to fit on this piece of transfer tape onto my cup. So I have a pretty wide section here. You definitely could just hand place everything, but I decided to kind of use my transfer tape to apply things in sections. But definitely if you wanted to just use, as you guys have seen me use before, just kind of the flat edge of my craft knife, sometimes I'll do that as well. And with a few of the pieces at the end, I will do this as well. But I just used my transfer tape to get as much of the leopard print in the space as I could, and then just used you know, small sections of that to fill in any of those open spaces. So guys, can we just stop and look really quick at this gorgeous vinyl? Like, this is like my new favorite vinyl. You guys know that I was on the roll of using that metallic like gold. Now I've moved on to this. Now that I have found this, I never want to go back to anything else. It's just so pretty. So I'm going to finish just applying any spots that I can off of this sheet of leopard print into those empty sections that I have on the glittered section. So just picking and choosing on my leopard sheet here which pieces will fit where, and just kind of applying those using a combination of my transfer sheet here as well as using my craft knife. So as soon as this cup is finished, I'm going to put this back on the turner for 2 final coats of epoxy, about 20 ml each of Alumilite's amazing clear cast plus formula. That is the one with the UV protection, the one that I like to use to make sure that my cups don't yellow. And so yeah, so this will go back on the turner, and then you guys know that it's now time for the final reveal. If you loved today's video, make sure you give this video a huge thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And of course, I'll see you guys again next week.